Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today I have with me Abhijit Iyer-Mitra. Abhijit, welcome to PGurus channel.
Har Har Mahadev, thank you for having me on.
Har Har Mahadev, Abhijit. And today, viewers, we are talking about a few very fast-moving developments. To start with, the closure of the Chinese consulate in Houston. Reports are coming in that they are burning records there, so they think that this building will be sealed less than 72 hours. Now, clock started about 12 hours ago. That's one thing we're going to talk about. The second thing we're going to talk about is the actual situation on the line of actual control. Sorry for using actual so many times. LAC, according to Abhijit Iyer-Mitra, I'm going to ask him a few curveball questions. We're going to have some really good, interesting discussions on that. And thirdly, lastly, about where does Iran stand? Is it with India or with China? We will discuss that also. So Abhijit, welcome to PGurus channel once again. And to start with, my reading of the history has been anytime a country asks another country to close its consulate, that is a precursor of, what do you think it is?
Look, it's usually a drawing a line in the sand saying enough is enough. You remember how Barack Obama in his last days as lame duck president after Trump had been elected, asked the Russians to shut down their holiday compound somewhere outside DC. Now, this is three Chinese consulates have been the hub of Chinese industrial espionage. One is the one in Texas. The second is the one in, the one in Houston. The second is the work in San Francisco. And the third is in Seattle. And each one of them specialize in different kinds of espionage. The one in Houston specializes in things like rocket engines and so on and so forth, hard material technology. The one in San Francisco, of course, focuses on software. And the one in Seattle focuses on aviation almost exclusively because of Boeing. It's almost the Chinese consulate for espionage, for Boeing espionage kind of thing. So there's this, everybody's known about this. Everybody's spoken about it. Nobody was actually willing to come out and say it in public, but I'm glad it's finally out there. And that is exactly why they've been asked to shut shop and move out. And obviously burning of diplomatic papers is what happens when something like this happens.
Well, viewers, we are accepting questions for this live hangout. You can post your questions at YouTube. They will be moderated and it will be addressed to Abhijit. We are hoping to have the same format as before for our live hangouts, about 30 minutes of talk. And then after that, the field will be open for questions. So please send your questions. And also, I hope you are subscribing to our channel and also donating to our cause. We really are thankful for your support. Today, I'm seeing a fine number of you who have logged in. Unfortunately, we have a conflict in the sense that Mr. Modi also is addressing the nation at 9 p.m. It was something that was too late for us to change, and we are going to go ahead with it. So, Abhijit, the next question that I have for you is this situation in line of actual control. There have been several high-level talks at the Lieutenant General level and so on and so forth. And then India has been saying that China is not living up to its side of the bargain. Now, please walk us through from the last time we talked about this, perhaps 2 to 3 weeks ago, and then walk us through what has been happening after that.
Right. So since then, what we've seen is disengagement. Everything that we've noticed is that the Chinese have pulled back some of the more offensive stuff like tents that were in sort of undefined as per some definitions. In some definitions, because we don't know exactly where the LAC lies, I go by the Google Earth this thing because it seems to be the approximate mean. We are not seeing any more tents in undisputed territory. We're not seeing any more incursions out there. At the same time, there is a significant uptick in the number of armor and aircraft and helicopters that they've deployed on their side of the LAC. Quite deep in some of them, especially the aircraft in Angari and Hotan. Helicopters, we've seen a slight uptick, which are all about 175 to 200 kilometers from the LAC. And with troop numbers kind of remain the same. There is a big deployment out there, but remember, there's an equally big Indian deployment of everything out there, of aircraft, of armor. In fact, in armor, we significantly outnumber them. And finally, you have troops as well, a huge number of troops out there.
Now, see, we've had some observations back and forth, if you will. Just before I continue the question, viewers who are joining us on Facebook and Twitter, I apologize. We had a slight glitch. I did not turn on Facebook and Twitter feeds. They are on now. If you're watching on Facebook and Twitter, you have not missed much. All we have done so far is that Abhijit Iyer-Mitra talked about the closure of consulates in Houston, the Chinese consulate in Houston, and he talked about 3 Chinese consulates that do active work in terms of spying, and he talked about Houston, San Francisco, and Seattle. Abhijit, for our viewers in Facebook and Twitter, please let me know if I missed something.
No, that's about it. It's purely because of industrial espionage, but it's important to remember what America has been doing is they are constantly, almost every day, they are announcing new measures against China. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that finally they've had enough is enough after COVID. But also remember, no American president has won re-election when the economy has tanked. And this must be weighing quite heavily on Trump's mind. So he is, I suspect, planning to do 3 things. One is, of course, Black Lives Matter was handed over to them on a platter pretty much, because remember, the biggest victims of Black Lives Matter rioting is Black people themselves, right? They are the most vulnerable, who get the most affected by these riots. And you've seen a commensurate swing in the popularity rating of Trump with Black voters since then. Number one. Number two, what he's planning on doing is this is going off to attacking Joe Biden and his son Hunter pretty much. And Joe, of course, you can tell from his latest speeches and even his earlier speeches, is losing it quite fast on camera. He's going to be weighing mincemeat off during the debates, during the presidential debates. And the third and most important thing, the way Russiagate was used against Trump, he is now going to rack up Chinagate. Because remember, most of these so-called woke-controlled companies like Twitter or YouTube or whatever, their links with the Chinese government run really, really deep, be it in terms of censorship or whatever. I think he's going to create a Chinagate this time, hurl at the Democrats. And you know what? The Democrats don't know what to do. Either they shut up and, allow their funders to sort of start taking the hits, or they just go on the attack and kind of prove that they are in cahoots with China. So it's sort of do when you're damned and don't do when you're damned.
One thing that is very, very striking is that Trump's moves are not in the political playbook of American politics. Up until now, all the politicians or presidents had some experience working in the Congress or in the Senate, or at least being governors of their state. And they have some idea of how to build consensus, how to sound people out before you actually invite them for a meeting. In other words, they kind of know where the meeting is headed before the meeting is called. So these kind of things are usually done backroom negotiations. We have seen so many presidential web series shows and so on and so forth. So we know what happened. But with Trump, Democrats are just not able to guess which way he's going to go. Move left, move right. And like the auto driver of Chennai, and this is mentioned entirely in jest, you put your hand out saying you're going to take a left turn, your indicator says you're going to go right, but you go straight. That's exactly what Mr. Trump seems to be doing. And I'm going to be going out on a limb here to say that there is many a surprise ahead of us in the next few months leading up to the elections. And by all means, no matter how much the polls say that it is going to be Biden all the way, I would like to wait and see, because there is a tremendous amount of sentiment riding against China today. And I wanted to mention one little thing for you, Abhijit. The Congress has passed a resolution in US supporting India's cause in the conflict with China. Also today, we are having the Chicago City Council vote on whether to pass a resolution condemning India for CAA. This, remember, after 20 senators and congressmen across party lines have written to Mike Pompeo saying that the minorities in Afghanistan, up to 5,000 Hindus and Sikhs, need to be given a special permission to be able to migrate to US. They are asking them to be allowed to get into US.
Too macro. I've lost the thread. What are we going to talk about now?
Okay, what I'm trying to tell you is that very, very significant developments happening. The government is indicating its hand in a certain way, but Chicago City Council is voting on this. So anyway,
listen, who is Chicago City Council? It's like Jumri ki Talaiya Municipal Council saying we condemn America for the invasion of Iraq. Who gives a damn?
Maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do that.
Let them do it. Are you going to stop every pig from grunting? Are you going to stop every cow from mooing? Are you going to prevent every rat from rat droppings in every gutter in every part of the world? You can't do that. Let them. I mean, whoever they want to posture for. I put this at the foot of the Indian American community. For them, organization is, for them, unfortunately, and this is something I've noticed with all Indian diaspora communities everywhere, for them, political engagement is photo ops with their senators or whatever, or it's organizing some dance event or something like that. Chori ke piche kya hai dance is their height of culture for them. And, where is the political engagement? There is none. Now, see, the problem with the Indian community is we live in areas where like the Jewish community, we're fundamentally urban, highly educated, and we live in highly educated Democrat voting areas. Now, the problem is there, even if we swing, it can't make a difference. The problem is we don't get political action committees. We don't focus. We start talking about things like dharma and indic and la-di-da-di-da. And every senator worth his salt knows that all they need to do is, India, old ancient civilization, click, 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 and the Indian community will vote for them. Okay. So, this is, why are we even extrapolating this rat turd of a council to American foreign policy as a whole? It doesn't matter. It's the failure of the Indian community in Chicago to do any damn thing. Shame on them. It has nothing to do with the government. Every Indian in Chicago, shame on you. Is it your fault?
Well, Abhijit, you have a point there, and there are groups organizing now in a much more cogent way. In fact, in the Minnesota St. Paul resolution,
you don't get marks for trying. You don't get marks for trying.
I'm sorry?
So they may be organizing. You don't get marks for trying, right? They only get marks for pass and win. I'm glad that what happened has now it's galvanized the community, but that's about it. I think, we need to go back to understanding which side of our bread is buttered. Joe Biden avoided being anti-India for so long till he got the presidential nomination. And we had all thought, the sane people in the Democrat Party were finally winning because they defeated all the wokes that had opened their mouths on Kashmir. But Joe Biden now is also veering that way to virtue signal to all these loonies on his side of the fence. And if he moves there, he is going to lose the Rust Belt, full stop. Because remember, moving to that side is not just saying things on India, it's also saying a lot of things which don't go down well with the Rust Belt. To do with community and Christianity and all of that as well, which is going to cost him very dearly. But, let's not throw stones at other people. Let's look within ourselves first. Where has the Indian American community failed? Unfortunately, the chosen flag bearers of the Indian American community are all these humanities academia schmucks who go around. If the Chicago Town Council says, passes a vote saying we condemn India for CAA, this thing, they'll say, no, this isn't enough. Indian Americans will be the first people to say, we also need the entire cabinet to be tried at Nuremberg style war crimes trial because CAA is a war crimes. they try to be whiter than white in that sense to fit in. That it's different kinds of inferiority complexities at play out here. So let's be clear about one thing. The Indian American community there, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, act like bloody dunces. Get your act together. Okay, stop cribbing. If you can't do something in your area, it's your fault. It's nobody else's fault. Full stop.
Abhijit, I apologize for taking a digression on what we were talking about. So, in your opinion, on the LAC, there are still disengagements going on, but not completed. And so we don't know what exactly or where exactly are going to end up. So this 4 fingers or 8 fingers in Pangong Lake, we've been having a little bit of discussion back and forth on that. And what was the position that India could patrol before April 1, 2020? And what is it today?
So 2 parts answer. First is patrol does not equal control. Okay. Patrol by its very nature involves a temporary fleeting presence. So for example, if I come to your home and I don't own your house, okay, you still continue to own the house, even though I might keep coming in for dinner as your guest or coming in stealing something at night. I like your computer, I like your phone, therefore I come steal it at night. You might not have a dog, you might not have a gun, therefore I feel free to come steal it. That is what, so we used to patrol up to finger 6. But remember the demarcated, well, not the demarcated, but the accepted border. Accepted for all intents and purposes, the accepted LAC has been at finger 4 at Foxhole Point. And why do I say this? Because in 1999, the Chinese built a track right up to the tip of finger 4. And by 2004, they had ended up asphalting the whole thing. Now, infrastructure equals control. Possession is 9/10 of the law. They have shown, what were you doing? If you were patrolling till 6, some people are claiming we patrolled till finger 8. Now, see, the problem here again is there is a cartographic definition of the fingers and there is an operational definition of the fingers. What I refer to as finger 6, a lot of military people refer to as finger 8 because the operational definition is free of any cartographic logic. It keeps changing based on who wants it to change, where or what. But finger 4 was a clearly demarcated point. Everybody agrees that this is finger 4 because it's the southernmost point of the northern shore of that lake. We used to patrol up to finger 6, but even if you look at the 1961 map that the CIA drew with a fairly thick pen of the LAC, 1962 LAC that they drew, it clearly shows finger 6. According to me, finger 6, which is the cartographic finger 6, is where Sirijap is, where we won a Paramveer Chakra. It's famous for the Battle of Sirijap in the 1962 war. It clearly shows the LAC is significantly west, at least 5 to 6 kilometers west of Sirijap. That is to say, 5 to 6 kilometers into Indian territory from Sirijap. And conveniently, that thick black line runs through exactly Foxhole Point. Now, remember the CIA map, declassified CIA map is the only map, official map that we have on record by any country. China hasn't made its maps public. India hasn't made its maps public. The Americans are the only ones who have declassified that map and made it public. And that clearly shows the boundary line, the LAC running at finger 4. Okay, so now we have 3 separate issues out here. One is this constant using of patrols to indicate control of territory, which is basically, it's a very devious sort of this thing, saying ki it's like kabaddi. It's like saying, "Maine hututu karke, I entered your territory, therefore I own your territory." That's not the way it works. You are basically playing kabaddi of international geopolitical kabaddi of sorts, number 1. Number 2, these people have been taking advantage of the fact that there is no clearly defined LAC as per India or China. Unfortunately for them, at least at Pangong, there has been. Okay. And the third most important thing is you look at the incompetence of Indian cartographers right back in 1961. Nirupama Menon Rao, the former ambassador to America and the former foreign secretary, tweeted something from a official document that the border negotiating team with China had brought back in 1961. And they actually marked Galwan west of Kabul, 68 east, 68th latitude or longitude, I forget.
Longitude.
West, it's west of Kabul. This is the kind of nonsense, the lack of attention to detail that cost us dearly. In an official document, you have a cartographic team that has gone out there. Even they don't know how to mark latitude, longitude properly. Nobody bothered checking. Nobody bothered double checking, and this became an official government document. Tell me, how is anybody going to take this seriously? Are we fighting China or are we fighting Afghanistan? Because as per this, we should be fighting the Afghan government. It is the Afghan government that is occupying Galwan. This is the kind of nonsense that people go on talking about here. Get your things straight. 6 to 8 months back, I had said they were inside in Arunachal Pradesh. I haven't seen physical infrastructure since then, which kind of makes me happy because I did see physical infrastructure when they'd come in. It has since been removed. I don't know what the status of their incursion is because maybe they're not putting up satellite visible infrastructure or whatever. But as of now, there is no Chinese infrastructure on the Indian side in Arunachal. Us samay, even with the physical infrastructure, nobody was willing to pay any attention to that. Today, we are supposed to believe that they have captured the largest chunk of Indian territory since 1962, when all the satellite maps, when all the available mapping tells you that the Chinese simply aren't on Indian territory. Indian side of the LAC. They're technically in Indian territory, of course, because we still claim Aksai Chin. And now there's some new bullshit coming up about Depsang and, in Depsang, which is near Daulat Beg Oldie, which is further north from Galwan. They just aren't. It tells you how third-rate and shoddy our newspaper editors are. So-called newspapers of record, so-called giants of the industry, who are so cranially, rectally inverted, they can't even pay the $50 required for satellite imagery to confirm what their idiot reporters are telling them. And they can't even do... You're not even willing to spend money. You don't understand what the issue is, but then you're not even willing to spend the money to confirm the story. Aajkal sources se kuch nahi hota hai. Right? So there is no Chinese intrusion currently on Indian soil, on Indian side of the LAC. Okay. What has been occupied in 1962? Yes. Okay. But even 1999, this building of the road up to the Finger 4 in Pangong, as per the 1962 CIA map, that was already under Chinese control in 1962. So you can keep shifting. I have very little time or patience for this kind of skullduggery where you have a shifting line of control. It's the Ajay Shukla shifting line of control. It keeps moving 5 kilometers here and there based on wherever he wants to move it. I have zero tolerance for this kind of nonsense. Settle down on it, draw the map, tell us where the LAC is, then I'll tell you where the Chinese are.
Okay, so a couple of things on what Abhijit just mentioned. One is that the software that he's referring to, I think, is the Planet Labs. It's a company that gives you satellite pictures for a small fee. And viewers, you are welcome to subscribe to this and see for yourself. There's no need for anybody else's word. You can take a look at it, which is baffling that the newspapers and the media in India won't take that little extra effort to look at that and then say, okay, because you can get like the latest and greatest situation as of like a few hours ago or a few seconds. I don't know the exact granularity in terms of time, but you get fairly real-time downloads from Planet Labs. So today, in your opinion, what is the contention in terms of LAC between India and China?
The contention is that China wants to stop India from building infrastructure, because India has finally started doing what China was doing, which is to build infrastructure. And like we said, infrastructure is possession is 9/10 of the law. Infrastructure marks possession. So because we've gone berserk on building infrastructure out there, China is now desperate to stop it because they sense we want an end game. We want to build all the infrastructure and settle the border out there. And they don't want the border settled out there because they want to keep this on the boil constantly. But again, this comes back to this Chinese cost-benefit analysis issue. I have never understood Chinese cost-benefit analysis. What they had to gain from this territory, nobody really knows. We keep hearing, oh, there's gold deposits, there's uranium deposits, there's extraterrestrial life forms out there buried in the soil. There's the Stargate that's going to take us into the next wormhole, into the next portal of the next universe, parallel universe, or something buried out there. Nonsense. Ancient Buddhist monks constructed it in 56,000 BC and nonsense like that. I mean, trust me, this stories of gold and whatnot out there is just this kind of rubbish. But we have to be very, very clear that what China is doing today is to prevent infrastructure construction, because they want to keep this on the boil. Their cost-benefit analysis, for some reason, we don't know why, tells them that this needs to be on the boil, and somehow settling it with India now requires a greater sacrifice of land on India's part, which they are going to pass off saying, we claimed all this territory, but now we're giving it to you, as if they're doing us a huge favor. It's like me walking into your house, occupying your floor. Right. That is how China settles its disputes.
Yeah. We just momentarily lost you, Abhijit. Going into your home, can you start from there?
Yeah, sorry. So it's like, what the way China does this is, it has no claim to your house, but they'll come into your house, they'll occupy the entire ground floor, and then they'll say, see, I'm such a great guy. I just settled my dispute with you because I gave you all this. I gave you the first floor of your own house. What a great guy I am. This is what they do. This is their idea of settling disputes. And, look, Aksai Chin is lost. There's nothing we can do about it. I don't think we can get it back. But what we have, we need to protect. And we're doing that just fine at the moment. My issue isn't with that. My issue is with what has happened since then. I don't know what is going through Jaishankar's mind, but he's made two huge wrong steps at the moment. And this is why, America doesn't take us seriously. Nobody in the West takes us seriously, realistically, private. They think we're a dysfunctional country, because even after they've killed 20 of your soldiers, tried to ingress into your land, you still say, day before yesterday, the foreign minister says, we will never be part of an alliance. Today, he's going around giving advice to America, saying how you should manage your plurilateral and multilateral relationships. It's just mind-boggling. It's like somebody who drives around in a Maruti giving financial advice to Mukesh Ambani driving around in a Rolls Royce.
Nice allegory there. Abhijit, question for you is that perhaps Mr. Jaishankar is trying to, lead them down a wrong path or something like that. We don't know. At the same time, somebody like a Minister of External Affairs needs to be a little bit more forthcoming in his words. And if he wants to obfuscate, he can always say all options are on the table, and that people can make whatever guesses they want from that kind of an observation. So he didn't do that. It's okay. We have a lot of questions coming in, Abhijit, but before we go to the questions, I just want to talk about the last topic. We talked about this a little bit in the past, which is Iran, Chabahar, and India. So there were news reports in India saying that Iran has stopped working on the railway project, or something to do with stop dealing with India. Then Iran called India's ambassador. Their minister said that no, there is no such thing. This is all fake news. What is your take on this?
Look, it's neither fake news nor is it real news, because I've written this in 2012. I written this again in 2017 when I went to Iran and went all the way to Chabahar and went and saw the Zaranj-Delaram highway, the unconstructed Zaranj-Delaram highway, which was meant to connect Chabahar to Afghanistan, unfinished on the Iranian side, unfinished on the Afghan side, because in, was it last year? Yeah, last year that I went to Afghanistan and saw the same highway, braving Taliban patrols and whatnot, went and saw the same unconstructed thing on the Afghan side of the road, right? On the Afghan side of the border. Now, the point here is very simple. If Chabahar had to take off, it would have taken off 10, 12 years back. Iran has refused to let us complete Chabahar. They keep saying, we're kicking you out, now we let you do things. We literally have to smuggle in equipment in order to do the construction that we want to do out there. Okay, the Iranians don't let other people use their territory to play their games. If you use Iranian territory, you have to play the Iranian game. That's it. Now, India doesn't want to play the Iranian game. Iran doesn't want to let India play India's game out there. So this is never going to get finished. You're going to keep reading these newspaper reports about India kicked out of Chabahar, India brought into Chabahar. Khamenei says India is part of Chabahar. The president Rouhani says you're not part of Chabahar. Is he the president right now? I don't know. Anyway, I just keep forget. There's no naming diversity out there. It's just so terrible. But anyway, this is a whole Punch and Judy show, right? It's like a merry-go-round that you go in, come out, go in, come out. It's like one of those surreal hazes. The story of Chabahar is a bit like Rahul Gandhi's cognitive senses. You don't know where he's looking, what he's going to talk about. The escape velocity of Jupiter, poverty is a state of mind. Iran and Chabahar are a bit like that. You don't know what's going to happen with Chabahar on a daily basis. Planet escape velocity of Jupiter or poverty is a state of mind kind of attitude they have towards it. But look, the Iranians consider you a third-rate power. They do not consider us their equals. They believe their historical and all their entire heritage is far richer than India's. Rightly or wrongly, I don't know, but that's what they consider. Okay, for them, they were the equals of Rome. Therefore, today they are the equals of America. India figures nowhere in that entire equation of things. So they're going to keep moving you in and out. It means nothing to us. And let's be clear, because Afghanistan is going down and down and down in a very bad way. Well, we know the initial American promises of what was going to happen, that, it was going to turn into an industrial advanced society under American tutelage, like Japan or Korea or Taiwan did after the war, or Germany or Italy did after the war. Simply isn't going to happen in Afghanistan. And therefore, Chabahar just does not make any economic sense anymore. Full stop.
Good repartee there. Good response on that question, Abhijit. Now we'll go to questions. There are quite a few of them. My request, Abhijit, is try to keep them to 2 minutes top per answer, because there's lots of questions and I'd like to cover as much as possible, because a lot of people have been waiting to hear from you. The first one is from Vamsi Jatla. What is the effect of floods in China vis-a-vis weaponization of water?
Look, I'm hearing the Three Gorges Dam is giving way. I haven't seen any satellite evidence of cracks. I haven't seen any photos of cracks. I've just been hearing news reports. But for a long time, I can only talk about this in terms of Tibet and the lower riparian states from Tibet, which is the Ganga-Mekong basin. And for the first time in Galwan, that they actually blocked waters. That is why we went in. That is why we lost 20 troops. And I think it was a sacrifice worth giving, because the consequences of allowing them to dam rivers, other rivers, would have been catastrophic for us, especially given that because of COVID, you have seen the last 20 years of urbanization of India literally reverse overnight. In 3 months, we've undone all the rural to urban migration that had happened over the last 15, 20 years. So what you're looking at now is an aborted water war that China tried to start. And that is the most important takeaway. It wasn't the territory. It was more the water war, which for Chinese wasn't really that big. I don't think they thought through the consequences, or maybe they did. There's no proof that they thought through the consequences. But it has certainly alarmed almost everybody, including Bangladesh, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, everyone, saying, what the hell are they going to do next? Are they going to do this to us as well? So you're going to see a lot more pressure on water on China in the coming years and things like that.
Next question from Abhimanyu Mohite. Can America and Western countries engineer a China-Russia split?
No. And I'll tell you why a China-Russia split isn't going to happen. As long as the 1980s almost, it's a tragedy, because India and America shared the exact same geopolitical goal, which was to see to it that no single power must dominate Eurasia. So a Russian-Chinese communist compact was the worst nightmare for India to come true and for America to come true. And so India was the one trying to break up the Russia-China axis. America wasn't trying to break it up because it just counted it as a whole, one solid block threat, mono block. They didn't exploit the differences till Nixon came about. And this comes about from a very ground-centric point of view. When your military fights on the ground, you look at things like this. When you move into the technology era, into the information era and things like that, and you move into air-centric combat, the more infrastructure your enemy has, the better it is for your air planners. What is a ground planner's nightmare is an air planner's dream come true. Okay, because what happens here is you're like, oh my God, I've got more aim points. It's like, going into an arcade game and saying, yeah, these are so many people. This is like bang, 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 bang. I can go bang, 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 bang. That is what an Air Force thinks of. Today in America, I can honestly tell you, there is absolutely nobody thinking on the grounds of splitting Russia off from China. That ping-pong diplomacy that Nixon and Kissinger did, trying to split younger brother China away from elder brother Russia, nobody is thinking on those lines today in America. Okay, nobody wants to split younger brother Russia away from China. And in fact, Russia thought it could get away with a lot because the West was invested in keeping Russia away from Chinese orbit. Today, the Russians are despondent because they see that the West is tougher on them than they are on China. And they're like, hey, we're number two. We're the ones you want to be wooing to push us away from China, and nobody's willing to do that. So you see, it's sort of a failure of imagination in DC, but it's also the way war fighting and the way you look at geopolitics has moved on.
Good response. I have just one observation to make there. If I understand you right, what you're saying is Russia wanted help from the West, and the West essentially turned them away. Is that?
It's a bit more complex. I mean, it was a bit more complex, but I'm talking about this just in terms of Russia, China, what is happening now. Because remember, there was also this memory of humiliation after the Cold War and things like that. That is a much more complex game. When we discuss Europe, I'll discuss that. Remember, nothing is monocausal. I'm just highlighting, in this case, what the Russia-China dynamic is right now with respect to the United States.
Thank you for that. Krishna Gudipati wants to know, will Trump win if he went to war with China? In your opinion?
I honestly don't know. Maybe, but I don't think he needs to go to war with China. He just needs to trigger some kind of a diplomatic crisis with China. It doesn't even need to be a war. I mean, why give somebody 5 when one will do? It's that kind of a thing. I don't think he'll commit to a war. I don't think he should commit to a war. It's a very dangerous, scary slope to go down. But I think between Black Lives Matter and a China gate, if one were to emerge, he will cruise to a win and allow Joe Biden to self-destruct.
So moving on, one other little thing that I wanted to mention to you, to the viewers, is that US has passed sanctions against all the people in Hong Kong who supported the new law, which means the council of people who are governing Hong Kong, all their assets in the United States are frozen. There are about 30 odd people, and they've said that only 2 people have actually got assets in US. So it's like a ripple. But that, just wanted to put that fact also out there. The next question is from Vikram Matre. Sir, people in YouTube are defending Tejas MK1's faults. Are these the people of JNU who usually do inferior quality research?
Yes and no. It's partially them. Partially, it's also people who have this unrealistic belief that, you can just cut and paste things and make them work. You take the best engine, you take the best radar, and you somehow combine it, and it makes a brilliant combination. It does not make a brilliant combination. Every matching the air intake with the engine is notoriously complex. It's almost voodoo in a sense. And the worst case example, we thought we could do that with the Sukhoi 30, which turned out to be such a disaster. Okay, we put in Russian radar, Israeli jamming, Indian radar warning receiver, French avionics, whatnot, mix and match, cut and paste, and it turned out to be a complete flying disaster. It's getting better slowly. Not all the problems are sorted out. It still has a low availability rate and things like that. Your Tejas Mark 1 is the same thing. Okay, you're again and again, people will say, oh, the GE engine is better, therefore it's a better aircraft than, say, the JF-17. You can have a better engine, that doesn't make it a better aircraft, period. Okay, it makes your maintainability and reliability better, but that's about it. What if the other electronics frizz? Okay, what if your power supply frizzes? So on and so forth. So they're free to defend the Tejas, but it's the proof of the pudding lies in the eating. Today, the JF-17 has export orders and has been exported to foreign countries. Come back to me and tell me when I'm wrong when you manage to get export orders for the Tejas. And then I will eat my jacket on the show live. But at the same time, if they don't manage to get orders for the Tejas, export orders for the Tejas, please ask them if they're willing to give up their pensions. Ask them
Thank you for that.
If they're willing to give up their pensions or work for the next 5 years free without taking money.
Well, much to mull over. Saurabh Debnath wants to know the impact of the recent Iranian deal on Cpec.
Nothing. Cpec is going to fail. If you look at internal Chinese journals, not the press doesn't talk about Cpec. But if you look at internal Chinese journals talking about this thing, they're increasingly, you look at the tone since 2017, it is getting more and more bitter. Because the Chinese believe the Pakistanis are deliberately trying to sabotage Cpec. And this is largely true. Because even though it is sort of an imperial construction project done entirely by the Chinese, the employment it provides to Pakistanis provides Pakistan with the first real possibility of breaking out of this feudal nexus between zamindar, army, and industrialists. Remember, everybody in Pakistan comes from those zamindari families that either go into industry or into the army, or the army is basically an industry as well. The Fauji Foundation is the biggest industry in the country, run by the army. So it's this triangle. And it's for the first time you might actually see the creation of a Pakistani middle class, which then rises up against the existing order, much the same Tiananmen Square. Remember, Tiananmen Square was just that. It was Deng Xiaoping's first economic reforms that created the protesters that came out into Tiananmen Square. And Deng Xiaoping immediately reversed those economic reforms. Instead of allowing private ownership and private everything, he converted most of the demand of China into public demand. So today, everybody who is wealthy owes their wealth to the Chinese Communist Party in some form or the other. So they don't protest against the Chinese Communist Party. This was the sort of breakout moment, and Pakistan will not let it happen because it's not ready for the social churn.
Viewers, I request at this point to stop sending questions. We have a fair amount of questions to work through. And at some point, Abhijit's throat is going to run dry, and I don't want to risk that. But we will have him again very soon with addressing some of the missed questions from this Hangout. So thank you very much. Please do subscribe to our channel. We're going to continue with our questions, Abhijit. Kaushik Chowdhury, and this has been answered a little bit, but I'm just going to pose a question. You want to just add to what you've already done. What are Trump's chances to be re-elected? Since Biden is banking on consolidation of Muslim votes in US, is US heading towards minority appeasement?
US is heading back for what we saw in the Salem witch trials. Remember, this wokeness is the same thing as your religious witch hunts. It is a way of bypassing the law and creating a sort of a mobocracy. Okay, number one. Number two, remember, no president has won re-election when the economy has gone down. At the same time, nobody has won a presidential election if they've been crushed in presidential debates. You saw how Joe Biden performed even in the Democratic Party debates. He was he actually won the nomination in spite of not winning realistically a single debate. Trump is going to crush him in those debates. The man doesn't have his wits about him when he's not reading from a teleprompter. He doesn't even have his wits about him when he's reading from a teleprompter right now. So you have two never-befores. Never has a president won when the economy is down, but never has somebody won a presidential election when he loses a TV debate. So I will reserve my judgment for when the TV debates happen. Right now, I think Trump is going to win it because the Democrats have basically handed Black Lives Matter. They've shifted the talk from the economy to race and woke and all that nonsense. So I think there is a chance, but going statistically, like I said, no president has won when the economy is down.
Next question from VIP Kohli. Will we ever teach a lesson to Twitter and Facebook? And I have something to add after you answer this question.
No. You don't have the guts for it. You don't have the brains for it. And basically, Twitter and Facebook are so deep inside the government, in every sense of that word. In many ways, they flatter their egos. But they also compromise the government, that you will never, ever see any kind of action. You remember what happened to the parliamentary inquiry? One of the CEOs just refused to come, saying, you're just not important enough for me to come, this thing. At the same time, Jack Dorsey, was it Jack or was it the Facebook guy? Somebody had to go sit and got grilled by the Singapore government.
Yes, but it was Mark Zuckerberg had to go. Yeah,
tiny Singapore. Singapore, smaller than Madras, smaller than Bangalore, could get the CEO of this company down, and the CEO gives you the middle finger and tells you, really, I mean, what are you? You're a bloody mosquito. You didn't even have the gall, the testicular fortitude to stick it to him. तुम्हारी औकात क्या है यार? And then superpower बकवास करते रहते हैं.
I said I will add to what you said. There may be a surprise in the offing. I don't want to count my chickens before they harvest, so stay tuned on this question. Next question. We have already answered this question, which is Kumar Navil. Hello, sir. I was told that China is working towards making RMB as a global currency. Is it possible by bullying this way to the whole world? Aren't they creating enemies everywhere? Guys, please work on giving proper English constructed sentences. I'm making them up as I read them. Sorry about that. Please continue.
Yes. RMB isn't going anywhere in my lifetime. Probably not in your lifetime either if you're younger to me. See, there's a lot more to creating a global currency than just creating all these financial entanglements across the world. Did the Soviet ruble ever become a global currency? No, of course not. Did the Deutschmark, when Germany was powerful, and nobody can accuse Germany of being not doing a cost-benefit analysis properly and all of that, did the Deutschmark become a global currency? No. Even if you look at it in ancient times, why was it that Persian coins weren't considered global currency, but Roman coins were? The entire Indian Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea trade was done in Roman sesterces and Roman talents and Roman denarii and things like that. So there's a lot more. It is trade flows. It is dependency. It is all kinds of things like that that lead to a global currency. RMB can never be a global currency as of now.
Do you know if the Roman coins were 24 karat gold or 22 karat gold? What do you remember?
There are all kinds of things. Copper, silver mix, electrum. Electrum is gold, silver mix, and then the gold was quite rare. There were talents. I think talents were the only. The talent and the gold bezant. Those were the only. After it became the Eastern Roman Empire, I think the gold bezant were the only gold coins. The rest of it was all copper.
Arvind, Vijay Bhatt, and Shankar Kumar Chatterjee, we've answered your questions. And now next question is from Amrit Mohanty. Is it possible to free Tibet? Because situation with Nepal, I think, is going to worsen.
No, not right now. Maybe in about 30-40 years when China implodes. We don't know what kind of implosion is going to happen, except that China is exhausting all its goodwill, and China is entering into lots of projects like Cpec, OBOR, BRI, call it what you want. I just call it, sorry to use this word, but bullshit initiative. They call it the Belt and Road Initiative. I call it the BSI, the bullshit initiative. So the BSI is, there is not one. I challenge all our viewers to show me one cost-benefit analysis document of any of these projects. There is nothing in existence because they simply haven't been, and we've spoken about this on previous episodes of PGurus. They are almost all, without exception, going to implode. This is like Soviet industrial growth. Remember, the current generation don't remember the mistakes of the Soviet Union. At least Xi Jinping does not. So it's just going to implode. Not under Xi Jinping's time, after him.
Thank you. Aditya Ramamurthy wants to know, hi Abhijit, what do you think China is staying silent on COVID-19? That is not helping the world with a pandemic management policy. And what is the impact of US's withdrawal from WHO?
WHO needs to go because WHO is a completely compromised organization. When you've got a Chinese agent running the WHO called Dr. Teddy, China doesn't need to open his mouth, because every time they need to open their mouth, Dr. Teddy opens his mouth and pretends that what China says is the global consensus. Okay, number one. Number two, remember, everybody opposed him in his election. They are now part of his team. So it's like honor amongst thieves. It's like a little, what is that game you play where you keep going around in chairs, and when the music stops, musical chairs.
Musical
it's the
chairs.
same
Game of musical chairs. Yeah.
The same musical chairs going around. So all these people who contest WHO elections, they are all equally compromised. They are all equally corrupt. They're all part of the exact same system. And isn't it amazing that the biggest, the people behind this trying to bring down HCQ, and the people whose drugs get nominated to be the cure fastest by the WHO are things that the Bill Gates Foundation supports. This was the same Bill Gates who was reviled when he headed Microsoft as being some kind of global dictator, kind of like how that Sacha Baron Cohen movie, The Great Dictator. He was literally seen like that at one point of time. Today, suddenly he's this angel. He hasn't changed. He's the exact same predatory business model, now masquerading around as humanitarian benefit for everybody. Okay, but it is what it is. But America getting out of WHO, best thing that happened, it was like America leaving the Human Rights Council, because that council was a joke. The WHO is weakened for it. Nobody else is weakened for it.
Ujjwal Singh wants to know, do you think USA has the resolve to go all the way to contain or stop Chinese aggressive postures, or is it just 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and it will be business as usual after the US elections?
No, I don't think it's going to be like that anymore. Because remember, you can sometimes go to a point of no return. I think that's what Trump is trying to provoke. He's trying to provoke a point of no return. But it will be handled differently from the way, say, the Soviet Union was handled. The problem with the Soviet Union was there were no business linkages. There were no real trade ties. There was no real dependency. I think the real point of a disentangling of the West from China will happen, and you will go back to a Soviet-style containment policy when 3D printing takes off. And the first thing to happen under 3D printing will be all the low value addition products like pens, toilet paper, bulbs, tube lights, and things like that. That will wipe off one section of the Chinese market. Once it gets into more complicated 3D production, medium value products, which is what, because China is a middle income economy, they do middle income value addition. Once 3D printing gets into that, that is when you will see the real collapse of China, combined with their own fiscal stupidity over this BSI initiative. And that is where, like I said, nothing is monocausal. It will be different things that come home to roost. you really need to start focusing on 3D printing right now, which is what Trump is not doing. So it could be 2 steps front and then 1 step back, possibly, if you don't get into 3D printing right now. Because when America puts its mind to something, it can do it. I think, Shri, we asked this the last time with gallium arsenide and gallium nitride, how America brought prices down from some ridiculous amount to some really cheap amount right now. When America puts its mind to something, it does it. That's kind of what we're hoping.
Yes, indeed. And America is very good at achieving economies of scale. Next question from Suresh Kumar. Is India trying to get US and Russia together against China?
Is America trying to get?
India trying to get US and Russia against China.
India can try. India neither has the diplomatic skill nor the brains to pull that off. If you think that, America is going to risk itself going against China for India, it's not going to happen. Whatever America does to China will be dictated by what China does to the rest of the region. And right now, China is doing a much better job of getting America against it. With Russia, unfortunately, what window of opportunity we had closed long back. If we had improved our economy and made Russia dependent on our economic success, we could have possibly done that. The problem is our economy never goes anywhere because prime ministers come and prime ministers go, but socialism goes on forever. So we're doomed to the Hindu rate of growth again. And Russia now is far too dependent on Chinese energy consumption. Because let's face it, Russia has basically become a white Saudi Arabia. All they do is export commodities. It's not a single product economy, but it's a commodities economy right now.
Thank you for that. Venkatesh Srinivas wants to know why there is no word on change in our first use of nuclear weapons policy. This doctrine will tie our hands vis-a-vis China.
Yes, I agree with you. See, the point is, a doctrine is a signaling document, and a doctrine needs to keep getting revised every 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I think we're the only country that hasn't revised our doctrine ever since it came into being. And remember, the doctrine isn't the advisory note that the National Security Advisory Board put out in the consultative committee put out in 1999. It is actually the cabinet note that was put out as a press release in 2003. That is your nuclear doctrine. Okay, so our doctrine hasn't been revised in 17 years. It isn't going to be revised because it's treated as some kind of, the BJP's own term was, it was Vajpayee ji's gift to the nation. The moment you start thinking of a nuclear doctrine is a life and death thing. It is an operational document. It is not anybody's gift to the nation. So the moment when words like gift to the nation are used, people in charge have lost the plot. So should it be done? Yes. But I don't agree with you completely on first use either. Because first use is a sign of panic. When you face overwhelming odds, that is when you go in for first use. For us, first use might become necessary after a month of war with China when our reserves and our ammunition and everything runs out. But till then, it's a bit dicey.
Sarthak Ghosh wants to know, what will Turkey's long-term impact be on NATO and India?
Nothing. I think Turkey is a mirror image of is a short-term compression of where China is heading in the long term. Okay, Erdogan started with the zero enemies policy, and now he has nothing but enemies all around him. Nobody wants to, except Ilhan Omar, nobody wants to be seen in a photograph. Ilhan Omar and who's the current Pakistani Prime Minister? I never know. Imran Khan Niazi. So Niazi and Ilhan Omar are the only two people that want to, the same Niazi whose uncle we had in captivity for a few months. Other than these two, nobody wants their picture taken with Erdogan. Erdogan is a swear word these days. They're going to go, China is going to go the same way as Turkey. But let's look at Turkey now. Nobody wants to touch Turkey with a barge pole. The only people engaging with them are the Germans because there's a huge Turkish guest worker community that immigrated there who were forced to give up dual nationality and things like that. But mentally, they haven't disassociated from Turkey. Other than that, nobody really wants, it's not even kosher to be seen with Erdogan anymore. Their impact is going to be zero, because NATO has realized that this is a country that was willing to take on Soviet weapons and compromise the entire NATO infrastructure. So what was the resistance to kicking Turkey out of the F-35 program? Zilch. When America decided to do it, nobody protested the decision. Nobody in NATO tried to stop it either. So Turkey, this whole blip that you saw in Erdogan's early time is all gone off now.
Dipankar Banerjee wants to know about trusting Americans. Apart from the 7th Fleet during 1971, the US refused GPS coordinates during Kargil War. Since Kargil is quite fresh in the memory, is it the reason for mistrust of Americans?
We didn't use GPS in Kargil War. We used laser-guided bombs and TV-guided bombs. We didn't have the paveway ammunition that we had from America was laser-guided. So, I think you're wrong on that. GPS coordinate denial today, you don't do coordinate denial per se. The only country that has coordinate denial is Iran at the moment. Even that doesn't work completely, number one. Number two, the only thing that Americans do is that they deny you if you're passing through an American line of fighters and things like that, they deny you stuff. But remember, you are talking about 1971, which happened, 50 years back?
Yes.
That happened 50 years back. Now, Stalin had no issues allying with America to defeat Nazi Germany. And you want me to believe that India should keep some 50-year-old wound in its memory and not align with them? How? I mean, if Stalin could, arch-communist, the father of every communist alive and dead today, had no issues calling the Americans his allies, working with them, meeting with them, openly declaring him as allies, and the Brits as well, but we shouldn't do that. How does that work? International diplomacy is not based on trust. It is based on short-term and medium-term interests aligning. Right now, our interests align. Tomorrow, there's no guarantee of where it's going to go. But just because you get into bed with the Americans doesn't mean you're left with a kid from the Americans. There are such things as condom in international diplomacy.
Thank you. Nikunj Mehta wants to know, what is the possibility of a two-front war? Can the Chinese Air Force use Pakistani bases to attack India? Before you answer, viewers, we had a very long discussion with Major Gaurav Arya on this. So I'd encourage you to go back and look at that video. But please go ahead, Abhijit.
Look, Pakistan is not going to put itself on the line for China, and China has never put itself on the line for Pakistan. So, can it happen? Of course, theoretically it can. But you have to be particularly stupid like Hitler, who before defeating Britain then invades Russia in order to set that in motion, right? Unless we initiate hostilities on both fronts, I don't see those two countries initiating hostilities on us, because the internal contradictions themselves are quite heavy out there.
Next question, Kinnar Brahmbhatt. Why is India always on the back foot and giving reactive reaction rather than on the front foot? Especially when China is busy fighting floods, why isn't India taking advantage of the situation and blockading the sea routes?
If I knew the answer to that, I'd be the owner of Antilla. Because that one question you've asked, it sums up all of India's policy. Finance policy, economic policy, law and order policy, regulatory policy, everything. Alas, I'm wearing, store-bought jacket, store-bought kurta. There's no Adila around me. So I don't know the answer to that, except that there's a massive, massive human capacity deficit. Okay. Where we have a great overestimation of our abilities. And, it's one thing to fool other people, but people who fool themselves, who delude themselves, are never going to go anywhere. And that is what we end up doing.
Next question, Harshul Surana. What is stopping New Delhi from recognizing Tibet or even giving Dalai Lama more prominence?
Because the Dalai Lama, see, like everything to do with Indian diplomacy, we keep saying we're strategic, we're looking 40 years down the line, 50 years down the line. It is not strategic. It is done because no bureaucrat wants to compromise his posting. So he will never commit to anything in the short term, because if it goes wrong, it will affect his promotion prospects. So he'll extrapolate everything to, sir, 50 years down the line, I'm giving you strategic vision. In the West, when you make strategic documents, nothing's meant to be more than 30 years. India is the only country that will tell you 50, 60 years down the line. Now, what happens in this particular case is that we are so completely transactional in everything. For us, the Dalai Lama is something to be used. Every time we're upset with the Chinese, we'll give him a bit of prominence. We'll get people to tweet out birthday greetings to him. But the moment China behaves itself, we're like, oh, let's ignore the Dalai Lama. Okay, this is not how you run a foreign policy, but according to our people, this is the height of foreign policy. Like I said, huge human capital deficit. Deal with it. I mean, I can do nothing about it. I can just point it out to you, and that's about it.
Rajat wants to know, is there a network/think tank that offers strategic news for a premium?
No. You have to extrapolate. You have to mix and match. Because I never trust anyone completely. I always choose from hundreds of different things. So, no, don't go by any one this thing. People tell me, sir, what books do I read? Or Abhijit, what news portals do I go to? Which satellite imagery should I look at? I use about 5-6 different satellites. I don't depend on one. So there's Planet Labs, there's Maxar, there's the European Satellite Agency, there's a Korean agency, and there's a Chinese satellite I look at. Because each one of them does a passover only once every 2 days. I use 5 different satellites to get sometimes 6-hour passovers and sometimes 8-hour passovers to mix and match and look at everything to figure out motion and movement. News is like that. You have to take it wherever you find it, and ultimately the quality of news depends on your mind, how it processes it, what it takes away from it. I'm sorry, it's not the answer you want to hear, but there's nothing that will spoon feed you what you want.
Niyant Rajapurkar wants to know, what will be the implications on Russia and Pakistan relationship owing to Russia's increasing closeness with China?
The good thing is Russia is still dead scared of China. They are falling into Chinese orbit, but I think there's that episode of Star Trek, the original Star Trek, where they get caught up, where Captain James T. Kirk and the Enterprise get caught up in the event horizon of a black hole. And it's inexorable. They're going to get pulverized and, stretched into infinity before they get absorbed into the black hole. But there is this absolute fear even in the face of that inevitability. Russia's like that, and China's like that black hole. But whatever Russia can do, it is preventing. Technically, Russia should have ramped up its cooperation with Pakistan. It hasn't. So Russia is trying to kick, scream, do whatever it can to stay out of Chinese orbit, but never, ever underestimate Russia. There is only one rule of war that has held true for the last 2,000 years. You never invade Russia. You never, ever invade Russia. You can invade China, you can invade, everybody invades India. Lots of people invade America too, but you never invade Russia. So beware. The Russians have this great love of pain. I've never seen a greater national tolerance of sadism as foreign policy. It's in the nature of the Russian people. I mean, you can call it sadism, masochism, or you can call it resilience. But they're a country I truly admire because they always manage to think out of the box and come up with solutions nobody else thinks about. I hope.
Suryavamshi Krishna Chivukula, he wants to know, who is a better president for India, Trump or Biden?
At least since the early 2000s, Republicans tend to be better presidents for India, and I'll tell you why. Before that, it was Democrats. It goes back to America. I would urge you all to search for this paper that this US Marine Corps colonel wrote. It's called Defense is from Mars and State is from Venus. That is to say, the Defense Department is from Mars and State Department is for Venus. Democrats do all this touchy-feely, achy, breaky heart nonsense. Republicans who dominate the Defense Department are just pure work. We need to do this. This is how you get it done. A, B, C, D, E. That's it. It's all tangible, tangible, tangible. State and Democrats are all intangible, intangible, intangible. Okay. Because of that, for a long time, Democrats were our best friends because we never had anything to offer America. Today, because we do have things to offer America, even though we don't deliver on it, Republicans are your best friends. And that's the way it works. So it doesn't matter Trump or any other Republican right now, they're just better for India. But not to say that Democrat presidents are particularly bad for India. Barack Obama was fairly good for India, but remember, he didn't go as far as he could have on the NSG membership, though we screwed it up. That's a different matter. The NSG meetings that happened in Seoul in 2015 or 2016, the way George Bush went out on a limb for us in 2008 during the IAEA nuclear, the NSG exemptions that were given to us, the Indo-US nuclear deal, and then finally the global nuclear deal. So the Republicans are just better for us. Even this posturing by Joe Biden for Ilhan Omar and Kashmir and all that nonsense, it'll evaporate over a period of time. So, once he's in power, he'll sing a different tune.
Just to add to your point, Abhijit, part of the nuclear deal, the way it got signed, it had some impact because Condoleezza Rice was a student of Professor Ved Nanda. I think he was working at Denver University at that time. And therefore, when things were going through a critical phase, she could get the cultural meaning of some of the postures that India was taking from her professor.
I would really urge you not to get into this cultural meaning thing. This whole cultural thing is what is bringing Indian Americans down, and it's made us political dunces in the US, a political irrelevance in the US. Condi Rice is tough as nails. She doesn't give a damn about culture because she supported the Iraq invasion, right? She will blow India to...
My point is limited to... Hold on. My point is limited to the Indian nuclear agreement only. Other things, yes.
I don't think... I've seen Condi Rice talk at several events. She has absolutely no sentimental attachment or any great affection for India in private. I think we need to be very clear about that. She's a good soldier. If the president tells her this is what is required to be done, she will do it to the best of her abilities. She's very good at that.
I'll try and forward this video to her and see what she has to say. She actually is in my neck of the woods. She works at Stanford. Srijit wants to know how China sees our friendship with Israel.
China doesn't pay too much attention to our friendship with Israel. Because they've never seen it as a sort of game changer. They only look at their friendship, not even friendship with Israel, because they take a very similar stand to India and Palestine in that sense. But China sees Israel as an important source of technology. But China is increasingly getting frustrated with Israel because Israel is no longer willing to share that technology. Not because Israel doesn't want to share that technology with China. It's because the Americans won't let Israel share that technology with China, which is very good for us.
Pradyuman Chowdhury, and this is the last question, Abhijit. Is it true Israeli F-35s bombed Iran nuclear sites recently?
Possibly, but see, they never admit to these things. You remember in 2011, they went and bombed the North Korean nuclear reactor that was being set up in Syria. They still haven't admitted to it. So they do a lot of these things. Maybe that virus that they used to infect
the port,
not just the port, but also the nuclear centrifuges and things like that. Stuxnet, which also ended up, the biggest victim of Stuxnet, surprisingly, was India, right? Because a lot of the Russian contractors who were working on the Iranian reactors used the same USB sticks on Indian reactors, which had similar centrifuges and the same Siemens control chip, which went and screwed over our centrifuges as well. But different story. But the Israelis are not like us. India likes to talk and not do. Israelis do, they don't talk about it. they won't, go do some failed strike somewhere and then scream from the rooftops, we've done the greatest thing since warfare was invented 50,000 years back. Yay! Give us Nobel Prize, give us this prize, give us that prize. They don't do all of that. What they do very quietly, and they don't take any credit for it. They may have done it. I won't put it past the Israelis. They're more than capable of doing it. And with the F-35s, they absolutely have the ability to do it. I suspect they've done it because, remember, the commander of air defenses has been sacked. And a lot of military people, including in the Iranian IRGC, the Pasdaran, have been purged. And it's a whole set of things coming together. Soleimani's targeted killing, these failings, the reported fly past of Israeli F-35s over Tehran, all kinds of things. Not Tehran, but over Iran. Allegedly, we don't know.
Wow, what a hangout that was. And all on behalf of all our viewers, and Abhijit, we hit a new record high today. We had essentially 2,000 plus viewers watching this live. And thanks so much for being patient with our questions. Some were tough, some were good. And Abhijit, it's my pleasure to have you again. And we will again, reconvene in a few weeks' time and go over this shifting sands, if you will, of the geopolitics of the region that is called as Asia. Thank you very much, Abhijit, and namaskar.
Jai Ma Durga.